Batiks, and how to make them ******. Transcribers note some minor changes to the text are noted at the end of the book. The new original cover art included with this ebook is granted to the public domain. Batiks, and how to make them Chinese screen panel by Pieter Mijer and Emil Weekers. Batiks, and how to make them by Pieter Mijer with illustrations from photographs by G.W. Hartinkeleffen, New York. Mead and Company, 1921. Copyright 1919 by Mead and Company, Incorporated. First edition printed June 1919, second edition printed August 1919, third edition printed December 1919, fourth edition printed September 1920. Forward: in writing the following pages on batiks, and how they are made, I had a double purpose in view. First, to make this ancient art more known to the public in general and to the many textile craftworkers in particular. Secondly, to try to give some practical advice which will make for the better execution of the work. Batik is not so crude a method of decorating material as many people have thought it to be. It is not a matter of smearing some wax on a piece of material with any old brush, dipping it haphazard into any kind of dye, leaving it to the gods to decide what color it is going to be, and finally trying to sell it as a high-priced work of art. On the contrary, it is a craft which requires quite a good deal of skill and knowledge of design, as well as a good idea of color. The batik art has been much abused, and it may be of interest to many to know something of its history, to read the description of the process as practiced by the natives of Java, the method used in Holland, and the means now employed by some craftsmen and women in America. Too much stress cannot be laid on the fact that it is, as a rule, the small details that many people like to overlook because they seem of comparatively little importance, that bring out the charm and beauty of a real batik. Batik is not difficult. The chief requirements are care and time, and the best results are always gotten by giving time to the work and not trying to do it in a rush. As with any other art or craft, one needs to study the medium before using it, and another fact that has only been too often forgotten is that batik has design and knowledge of color as its foundation, and I would like to advise readers who have not studied these essentials to leave batik alone until they have acquired some understanding of them. Most of the hints given here are the outcome of the many years that I have spent making batiks. Having seen it done in Java as well as in Holland, I have had an opportunity to compare the different ways of working, and by experimenting, have found many little helpful things which I gladly share with present and future workers. In the last few years, batik has advanced in this country with rapid strides, and I am sure that a good deal of this is the result of the interest which manufacturers, especially those in the silk industry, have taken in its development. Batik work, however, is not a manufacturing process. The moment we try to commercialize it, that is, to make the same design in quantities, the quality decreases. A great deal of the beauty of a batik lies in the personal touch of the artist or craftsman who makes it, and we may safely say that neither of them is able to do machine work and produce a practically unlimited quantity in a short time. It certainly is a pity that some manufacturers have already tried to commercialize it by means of using untrained boys and girls to execute in quantities the designs of others. When one sees the result of these efforts, one is inclined to ask, is it a good idea to spread the knowledge of batik? On the other hand, if the buying public knows more about the work than it does now, if they know the time and the care it takes to make a good batik, then I am sure that their desire for good batik will increase and the manufactured product soon will be where the other manufactured arts have gone. Before going on to the description of batik, I should like to say a word of thanks to Olive Earle for valuable help. Also to House and Garden and Elseviers Gale, Manuscript for their kindness in lending me some of the photographs used. Pieter Mijer. New York, April, 1919. Contents page Batik in Java 1 Batik in Holland 24 Utensils and materials 32 Tjontings 44 The batik process 50 Successful dyeing 59 The value of a dye record 77 Illustrations Chinese screen panel by Pieter Mijer and Emile Weekers Frontispiece facing page Javanese cane Kapala 2 Enlarged detail of native sarong 4 Native design showing European influence 14 Pure native design adapted for European use 14 Conventional fish design by Chris Lebio 26 Geometrical fish design by Chris Lebio 28 Stork panel by Chris Lebio 30 Flamingo curtain by Pieter Mijer 30 The use of batik in interior decoration 32 Dyeing of textile 34 Cleaning the tjonting 34 Floral design entirely executed with a brush 36 Various types of tjontings 46 Scarf batiked by Hazel Burnham Slaughter 50 The right way to hold the tjonting 54 The use of the brush for filling spaces 54 Tank for separating wax from gasoline 58 Spring by C. Bertram Hartman and Pieter Mijer 64 By following the arrows in the above chart it will easily be seen which colors should be mixed together in order to produce a given color and the various lengths of the connecting lines indicate about the proportion in which the dyes should be used 68 successive stages in the making of a batik 74 successive stages in the making of a batik 76 The use of batik for costume 78 Sorceress by Arthur Crisp and Pieter Mijer 80 Batiks, and how to make them Batiks, and how to make them Batik in Java investigation shows that there never was a time when the art of batik did not flourish in Java. The robes of idols worshipped in prehistoric days were decorated very much in the same way as those of today, and apparently the modern native method of doing the work differs little from that employed so many hundreds of years ago. The literal translation from a Javanese paper on the batik art, which concludes this chapter, shows something of the confusingly elaborate process used in the East, while the description of the modern American way of working explains how comparatively simply, effective and beautiful results can be obtained. Difference in methods The chief difference between the Occidental and the native way of batiking is that the Occidental starts his dyeing with the lightest color and dyes his tones over each other, whilst the native dips his fabric in the darkest color first and removes the wax each time that he needs a lighter shade, and he only uses dyes that set by oxidation. Of course their batiks have to stand very much rougher treatment than the textiles decorated here, and to make the dyes stand the terrific glare of the sun, the innumerable washings, and the regular dips taken by their wearers who are tremendously fond of bathing, it is necessary for them to take every precaution to produce fast colors. Their methods may seem complicated, but it would not be amiss if American batikas were to use a little more of the patience and craft that the native exercises, instead of eternally seeking shortcuts to superficially beautiful effects. Batiks are chiefly used in Java for wearing apparel, and as a rule are made of calico, which is imported from Holland and England, although homespun cotton is occasionally found and was used, of course, before trading with Europe developed almost mail-order facilities. Javanese kain kapala, Javanese costume kinds. The costume is similar for men and women and consists of the sarong, the selendang, and the sarong kapala. There are two types of sarong or loincloth worn, which are known as the kain panjang and the kain kapala. The former is decorated with an all-over pattern and is used for everyday wear, whilst the kain kapala is a more expensive form, which besides the all-over pattern, has at one end, from selvage to selvage, an elaborate design. There is no intricacy of cutting in a sarong, as it consists merely of a piece of material from 3 to 4.5 yards long and about 4 to 2 inches wide. The material used for this garment is almost always cotton of varying grades. The Javanese sarong facing page 2 is made in 4 colors: the cream color of the original material, a bright indigo blue, red, and purple, which is the combination of the red and blue. The main part of the sarong is decorated with a flower and bird all-over design, the ground being the cream color of the material, while the red dominates in the flowers and birds. The wide border has a red background with a cream floral decoration, and the narrow border has a blue background with an ornamental design in cream and red. The kapala of this sarong is in red, with a scattered floral decoration and filled in with a characteristic Javanese filling-in pattern. The purple notes are scattered through the design. Facing page 4 is shown an enlarged detail of this design. Selendang. The selendang is no more complicated as to shape, and the decoration is either in the form of an all-over design, or it has a plain center with a decorative border. It is usually about 3 yards long and 18 inches wide, and it is worn by the women who throw it over their heads, scarf-wise, but its use is more general as a carry-all for babies and other personal effects. Headdress. The sarong kapala is a square piece of material worn chiefly by the men and is wound around the head in a kind of turban shape. After it has been folded on the head to the satisfaction of the wearer, it is taken off very carefully and starched on the inside. Enlarged detail of native sarong. The women sometimes add an upper garment, called a kemban. This is just a long straight strip which is wound tightly round the body. The shoulders and arms are left bare, for they are great workers and do not allow their movements to be hampered by an undue amount of clothing. Javanese design. The designing and waxing of batiks is done largely by the women, whilst the men usually take care of the dyeing part of the process. The designs, whilst apparently originating with each individual worker, are founded as a rule on what one might call standard designs. These have been used for generations, although in course of time they have changed in character somewhat. In most cases, anyone familiar with these Javanese classics can trace the modern designs to their source and will recognize in present-day interpretations figures well known in native folklore. Other designs have significance in that they designate rank or social prestige. Some 100 of these patterns have regular names, such as Batik Parang Rusa and Batik Sawa. These two are reserved for the exclusive use of royalty, and many designs are esteemed as much for their social ranking as for their artistic merit. Decorated silk is occasionally worn by the native aristocracy. It is not in general use, however, and is always made in the form of a selendang and worn as a scarf. The colors found in a batik can be interpreted to denote the part of Java in which it was made. Those from Jogja and Solo are executed in rich tans, beautiful golden browns and deep indigo blue, which colors are used on the royal batiks. The work from these districts is somber in tone but very rich in design. Pekalongan batiks are usually in white and different shades of blue, or rather cream and blue, for the native treats his fabric with oil before starting to work, and this gives a rich creamy tone to the white. Dead white itself is never used as it is literally associated with the dead, being the color of grave cloths and always signifying death. Variety of coloring in a batik will mean as a rule that the piece had its origin in the district of Semarang. The prices of the garments of course vary according to the amount of work on the piece. Canes can be bought as cheaply as $1 each, and sometimes as much as $25 is paid. However, a batik costing as much is rare, and is usually one made to special order. About $2 to $2.50 is the average price one would have to pay for a garment in Java. Japs. Besides the batik done entirely by hand, the native produces a decorated material known as jap. This method can best be compared to block printing, the wax being printed onto the material instead of being applied with a tionting. Instead of the wooden block associated with block printing, the native uses a sort of die made of wood, on which the design is made by the insertion, edgewise, of thin strips of brass or red copper. In some cases the whole die is made of the red copper. These japs are reminiscent of the work done in Madras, where a similar process has been employed since the 15th century, for the direct application of the dyes. Some japs are done entirely by printing with blocks, while others are partly handwork. The dyes are used as time savers when making borders or patterns with a regular repeat. The native artists consider these substitutes, which are sold to the poorer classes for daily wear, very inferior to real batik, and no Javanese of any standing would dream of lowering himself by wearing one. At the present time not many dye makers are found, as there is only a comparatively small market for the work. A dye is so solidly constructed and lasts so long, that once made, there is seldom a reorder of the same design. The price of dies varies according to the size and elaborateness of the design, ranging from about 25 cents, American money, to as high as $24. In Semarang there are still a few men who trade in these japs, whilst in Surabaya there is only one man known who is able to make them. The copper used in the making of japs comes in 3 different weights. The lightest is used for the making of fine outlines, the second weight for the heavier lines, whilst the third and heaviest weight is used for the framework. Like the tionting, the jap is constructed in 3 parts. First, the body of the instrument, which is composed of the variously bent strips of copper which make the design, then the framework which holds these strips together, and lastly the metal handle. The jap has to replace the work done with the tionting. Therefore the object of the jap maker is to replace all tionting lines with strips of copper of varying sizes, which, when printed, will give the effect of perfect tionting work. To that end, the strips of copper have to be curved and bent, and are set in a vertical position, that is, with the edges uppermost. This of course is very delicate work which requires good craftsmanship and much patience. In making the japs, the copper plates of different thicknesses are first cut into strips, each strip of the same width. The design for the jap is made on paper, and the copper strips are bent in the various shapes as indicated in this design. Here is where the good craftsmanship is essential, as it is no easy matter to reproduce fine curved lines with the strips, especially in the case of flowered designs, as no sharp angles may be shown in the bending of the copper. Then the whole design is soldered together, and fixed by the same process onto the frame to which the handle is attached. This does not, however, complete the die maker's work, for as in batik work with the tionting where the material is waxed on both sides, so with the jap does the fabric have to be printed on the reverse side as well. Thus, the die maker has to make a second jap in which the design is the exact reverse of the first one. It takes a die maker about 20 days to make a complete set, that is 2 corresponding japs, each about 8 by 8 inches square, for which he gets about $8. Out of this of course he has to pay for his materials. When the japs are finished and found correct, that is, when every little line on one die is found to correspond exactly with the same line on the reverse block, then it is the business of the printer to print the japs so that no difference is shown in the design. The making of a pair of japs is only necessary when an irregular design is to be produced. As in the case of a symmetrical pattern, the same die can be used on both sides. For the reproduction of a not very elaborate tionting design, a set of 13 to 15 japs is required. This means with the reverse set at least 26 to 30 separate dies. The original outlay for the making of a jap may be great, but if the amount of work that can be done with one set is considered, it can be seen at once that the prices of pieces done by this process will be very low. The printing of japs is practically always done by men. The workman sits on a low stool, and in front of him is a slanting table to which a large pad is attached. Over this the piece that is to be printed is spread. The wax is heated in a flat pan, in which there is a pad of jute, covered with unbleached muslin. the wax is transferred to the metal by pressing the jap onto this pad. To remove the surplus wax from the jap, the printer swings the die up and down a couple of times and then presses the jap onto the material in the place where the decoration is desired. After covering one side of the material in this manner, the same process is repeated on the other side. As the wax shines through the fabric, it is not a difficult matter for the printer to place his die in the exact position, so that it will register correctly, but nevertheless, there will be very few pieces made in this way found without a slight inaccuracy in the design. Although all the actual line work in a jap is done by the use of dies, a certain amount of the work, such as filling in spaces and big surfaces, has to be done by hand with the tianting. This, however, amounts to a very small proportion of the work when compared with the amount of labor required in the making of a real batik. A good printer can print about 20 pieces of material, sarong length, a day, while it would take 12 to 15 days to produce one piece of a similar design, with a tianting. The European printed imitations of batik meet with very little favor among the native Javanese, who are very critical of art and craftsmanship, and the importations only find a market among the poor. Native industry for the most part. Batik is a home occupation of the native, but some districts have become quite manufacturing centers. The industry is chiefly under the management of the Chinese, with the natives as their workmen. In the district of Lassim, where a great deal of batik work is done, the Chinese employers give the work out to the natives, who do it in their homes. 50 to 100 canes will be given out to one man, who will have them waxed, and they will then be fetched by another worker who will do the dyeing. This work will bring into the native, on an average, the lordly sum of 2.5 cents, American money, a day, and it is estimated that in the neighborhood of Lassim alone, there are some 4,300 people subsisting on this munificent salary. At that, this group of workers are rather better off than the women who are employed directly by the Chinese for the finer batik work. Large numbers of them bind themselves to work for 3 years, at the beginning of which period they are given 30 guilders, equivalent to about $12. They are given board and lodging and once a year a new outfit, but they receive no more pay. Many of them work like this for years in succession, and from time to time they borrow small sums of money from their employers which they cannot pay back, with the result that they are never out of debt and are consequently, to all intents and purposes, practically owned by their exploiters. Authentic figures give 2,100 natives working under these conditions in Lassim. There are a few establishments run by the Dutch in Java, who, besides producing pure native designs, have used native adaptations of European designs with splendid results. Native design showing European influence. Pure native design adapted for European use. A combination of Javanese and European influences is shown in the illustration facing page 14. This pillow top, batiked by a Dutch artist, has native motifs, arranged in a symmetrical design. As a batik, it is about the finest piece the writer has been able to find, as there is no flaw in the execution. The stiff geometrical pattern, however, does not give quite such a pleasing effect as the freer Javanese design. A sample of this is shown facing page 14, which is pure Javanese decoration. It shows the arrangement of a bird and some octopuses and was used for a small pillow top. The artist has been left free in this design, not being tied down to a geometrical repeat, and the result artistically is far superior to the previous design. In the event of some enthusiast wishing to batik in the actual native manner, he can do so by following the process as described by a native and translated here word for word. Native process batik is the art of dyeing fabric in one piece in different dyes consecutively, through the combination of which the pattern of the design is produced. The materials used in this process are cotton and very occasionally silk, wax mixed with rosin and dyes. The dyes usually are vegetable, although aniline is used, but rarely. The first of these batik requirements the native buys at the pasar market. The dyes they make themselves, and in the case of the blue dye it is as a rule the property of a professional dyer, who is called the toekang medal. The cotton used now by Batiks is always of European manufacture and is graded according to the fineness of the texture. The different qualities are known severally as Mori Muslim or fine weave cotton, Mori Menta or unbleached cotton, and Mori Kasar or coarse weave cotton. The second grade is subdivided into Mori Menta aloes, which is the fine grade of the unbleached cotton, and Mori Menta Kasar or coarse unbleached. This last kind is only used by the native aristocracy for the clothing of the members of their household. They themselves wear batik of Mori Muslim or Mori Menta aloes. The measure used when cotton is bought at the pasar is called katya or saptangnan, and it is a square measure. That is to say, if, for instance, the cloth is a yard wide, then the measure or katya is a yard square, and if the width is a yard and a half, the katya is a yard and a half. The cotton as it comes from the market is not immediately ready to be batiked. If it is a bleached cotton, it has to be treated for the removal of all the starch, chalk and other stiffening with which it is dressed. This is done by washing it several times in clear cold water. It is then soaked for several days in coconut oil. This in its turn is boiled out in water containing the ashes of burnt rice stalks. This process is continued till the fabric is free from oil. This soaking and boiling is always done, whether the material is bleached or unbleached, and is called matang, which literally translated means done or cooked thoroughly. After the piece is dried in the sun, the cut edges are hemmed, digilid. Now the material has to be starched again, njekoilai. This stiffening is to prevent the wax from flowing too freely, a condition known as mresep. The rice water that is used for this is made from a strained rice gruel, or more simply, the water is used in which the rice has been boiled. After the material has been starched, it is dyed or dried once more in the sun, and it is then rolled up. This roll is laid on a wooden board, kemplongen, and pounded with a wooden hammer, gandang, or if a hammer is not available, the wooden rice pestle, aloe, can be used. This process is called nganplongi and is to make the material soft and supple. Now the material is ready to be batiked. and the following materials and tools are needed. 1. Wax. Usually 6 parts of melum jeplak and 1 part melum poeti are used, with sometimes the addition of a little melum ireng. The melum jeplak consists of a mixture of damamata co-aging, which is a kind of rosin that comes from Borneo, melted with animal fat. The melum poeti is pure beeswax and the melum ireng is dark-colored wax which has been used already in a previous batik and which has become dark from the blue dye which it took up when in the blue dye bath. The first 2 kinds of wax can be bought at any market, but not the melum ireng, as everyone who batiks always saves enough dark wax from former work, or in case of need, a neighbor will always lend some. 2. A pan called wajan in which to melt the wax. This is generally of iron, though poor people use stone pots. Different kinds of tjontings. Price of native tjonting 3. A little copper instrument called tjonting used in drawing with the wax on the material. It is made of fine thin red copper and has 1 or more little spouts and a bamboo handle. These tjonting have different names according to the type of work for which they are used. A. Tjonting eisen. This has a very slender spout and is used to make very fine lines and little dots. B. Tjonting kwandanjan. This instrument has a larger spout and is used to wax the parts which have to stay white in the first process. C. Tjonting penengang. This is the tjonting used to cover up the bigger surfaces. D. The penembok has a very wide spout to cover parts that are to be completely protected by wax. E. The tjonting pengarda has 2 spouts next each other for the drawing of parallel lines. There are various other varieties that have 3, 5 and sometimes as many as 6 spouts for making little rosettes and groups of dots. Tjontings are always made by men and the work is not subdivided, that is to say, 1 man makes the instrument from start to finish. As a rule the makers have at least 25 tjonting in the course of construction at the same time. It takes a good workman 6 to 7 days to make about 250 of the little tools, that is, about 40 a day. Figuring the cost of materials and charcoal used in the making, together with overhead expenses and the receipts figuring at the rate of 24 cents, American money, for 240 tjontings, it will be seen that an excellent craftsman makes on an average about 30 cents in Dutch money, equivalent to 12 cents American, a day. 4. The jegol, an instrument which replaces the brush used in Europe and is made of a thin wooden stick with a wad of cotton tied to the end. This is for waxing very large surfaces. 5. The iris. This is a spoon made out of cocoa nut shell and has a bamboo handle. It is used to mix the melted wax and to scoop the wax off the water in which the finished batik has been boiled. 6. The waja. The copper pan in which the fabric is boiled when the wax is being removed. 7. The panjawanjan. A small movable stand over which the material is hung during the waxing process. 8. The jawang. A small bamboo clip used to fasten the fabric to the stand. Rich batikas use an iron clip called bundole. 9. The dolang. A large wooden trough for dyeing. 10. The pane. A small vessel also used for dye made of wood, copper, or earthenware. 11. The blibio. A wooden straight edge for use when drawing straight lines, a process called batik and garrison. 12. The semprong. A blowpipe with which to blow the fire. The fire is made, as a rule, between 3 stones set in the form of a triangle, upon which the wax pot is placed. To do real batik work, the proceedings are as follows. First, the main outline of the design is sketched on the material, with charcoal or pencil, and when this is completed the fabric is hung over the little stand, and with the tianting the design is drawn in with wax, the material meanwhile being supported with the left hand. The worker sits on a little mat in front of her stand. The finer parts of the pattern are drawn in without pencil guiding lines. When one side is decorated, the piece is turned around and the back is very carefully drawn in. With all the surfaces covered which are not intended to be blue, it is ready for the blue dye bath. This dyeing in blue is done by the batika herself, or more often by the professional blue dyer who does it for a small remuneration. If red is planned on the batik, the wax is removed from the places where this color is wanted by sponging with hot water. The material is then restarched with rice water, aran sugar and pulverized rando leaves, so that the wax will not run or become soft. The parts that are to remain blue have to be recovered with wax, and the piece is ready for the red dye. This red dye is made from an infusion of soga bark. Successive dippings are made until the desired color is obtained. To make the color permanent and at the same time to obtain the much desired purple glow, the material is dipped in a bath made of a mixture of java sugar, whiting, and alum. It is left in this solution for about an hour, after which it is well rinsed and transferred to a hot water bath. The water is boiled and the wax is dissolved. The wax floating on the top of the water is collected for further use. The finished batik is then dried in the sun. If other colors are required on the piece, the same program is repeated. Batik in Holland. Batik in America is still a comparatively recent importation, brought here some 10 years ago. It was met with absolute incomprehension and lack of interest, but its real merit as a means of decorating fabrics has earned it a place in the industrial art of the nation, and year by year it is gaining wider recognition. History. For 270 odd years it has been known in Holland, to which country it was brought by the Dutch traders from Java in the middle of the 17th century. It was not, however, received very enthusiastically, and the commercial failure that followed the importation of some 2,000 pieces, which were finally sold at auction, as no market could be found for them through regular channels, did not encourage traders in their efforts to popularize batiks. From that time, that is, about 1750 until 1817, interest in the work decidedly flagged, and the honor of reviving it must be given primarily to Raffles, who gave a description of it in his well-known History of Java published at the latter date. He, however, seems to have had very little personal feeling for the art and merely wrote it up as a matter of history, and it remained for the modern artists to give it his first real impetus. Dutch artists of fame. The present keen interest in the craft is mainly due to Chris Lebio, Die Geselloof and Lion Cachet, who have, by their wonderful work, revived and stimulated a nationwide appreciation of the art. American batik has recently gone through a phase of development similar to that experienced in Holland some 12 years ago. It has been in danger of getting into the class of transient cults and becoming a fashionable pastime with a rise and fall similar to the craze for doing peasant wood carving, burnt woodwork or sweater knitting. But here, too, its real merit has saved it from becoming just a modish amusement. In Holland it was even introduced into girls' schools as a regular course, so that graduates might enter the social world fully equipped. Luckily for its ultimate survival, however, it required so much technical knowledge that it was soon left to serious students. But the desire for the beautiful results obtained by the process was not relinquished so willingly, and the result was that people tried to produce the effect without the work. This imitation was called a secret process and enjoyed considerable vogue. The general public believed that this substitute was real batik, because the material had been dipped and some wax had been used, but anyone who knew anything about the genuine process was not fooled and recognized that stencils and various other fake methods had been utilized. The unlimited patience of the native worker was unknown, and unsung was the thoroughness of the painstaking craftsman. At this period the watchword was speed, and the results showed it. Conventional fish design by Chris Lebio. The importance placed on the crackle effect is another parallel in the phases of development in Holland and America. Crackle certainly has its place in the beauty of batik, but the indiscriminate use of it as a complete motive of decoration in itself is to be regretted. It would be used less, probably, if examples of the best native and European work were studied, in which real design and color are the arresting features. Even whilst admitting that the medium does limit the designer to a certain extent, study of the work of the before-mentioned Dutchmen, Die Geselloof and Lebio, will show the variety of design, feeling and temperament that can be expressed through the batik process. Die Geselloof. Lebio. Die Geselloof considers batik a better way to express himself for his mural decorations than either oil or watercolor painting. He uses the brush to a great extent and works with great freedom of execution, making the medium conform to his own particular type of work. Lebio, on the other hand, after the manner of the Javanese, sees the tianting as the only tool with which to produce his richly fantastic designs. Lebio is technically the greater artist and possesses a supreme disregard of time when he is producing a magnificently ornamented textile. His attitude toward his work is reminiscent of that of the monks who in bygone ages spent years on the intricate and beautiful ornamentation of their laboriously hand-lettered books of devotion. They, too, had perfection of design and craftsmanship as their only standard. These men have been an inspiration to Dutch artists, and the illustration of a batik by Chris Lebio facing page 26 will give the reader a good idea of the high standard of proficiency this Dutch artist and craftsman has achieved. It will be seen that no actual lines were used in these designs, If a line effect was wanted, it was made by a series of little round dots, almost equal in size, with the result that a soft pleasing line is obtained instead of a hard one. Geometrical fish design by Chris Lebio. By graduating the size of the dots, from small to large, an effect is produced that never could be obtained with lines. Not only are the lines treated in this way, but whole surfaces in which a light tone is desired, instead of being covered off with a brush, are laid in with countless dots very close together. As can be readily understood, this handwork requires the acme of craftsmanship, for if the dots are placed irregularly, that is to say, if their arrangement is not directly harmonious with the main lines of the design, the pattern formed by the spaces between them would disturb the rest of the drawing. In the second reproduction it can be seen that the little dots are actually laid in circles, but with such regularity that no circles are shown. The workmanship in the stalk design is even more amazing than that of the two first decorations, and it is hard to believe that a human being has had sufficient patience to execute such a design. European use of batik. In Europe, batiks are chiefly used for interior decoration, table covers, screens and lampshades being more popular than costumes decorated by the process. It is also used to a certain extent in bookbinding, on paper and on parchment. Practically the same methods are employed when batiking these materials as for woven goods, but experimenters are advised to take the greatest care when handling paper, which of course, when wet, tears very easily. To batik parchment it is necessary to first soak it, in order to make it pliable, then whilst wet, it should be stretched on a piece of plate glass, slightly larger than the parchment, and glued at the edges with strips of paper binding. When thoroughly dry, the design is pounced on or drawn in with pencil. Before starting to apply the wax, the glass must be warmed from the back, in order to make certain of an easy flowing of the wax. If the parchment is cold, it will be found that the wax congeals too quickly and will not be workable. The parts of the design to be left colored are covered with wax as usual, and a little wall of clay is built around the edge of the glass. This forms a bath into which the dye is poured. The color is allowed to soak in thoroughly and the dye is then poured off, the process being repeated. If the tone from the first bath is not intense enough, other colors are applied in the same way. The wax is then removed by sponging carefully with gasoline. Stalk panel by Chris Lebio. Flamingo curtain by Pieter Mijer. Aniline dyes are used chiefly, and occasionally acids which produce color by their action on each other are employed. Vegetable dyes are popular in Holland on account of their permanence, the Dutch being almost as particular about the durability of their work as the Javanese. This is natural when one remembers that, there, the batik art is considered in the same light as painting and sculpture, and frequent exhibitions are held for a public whose attitude toward the craft is very different to that of many Americans, who do not yet appreciate the art as an art. Beside public interest, the government of Holland has done its best to stimulate the study of the craft. Experimenting stations are maintained, where free of all cost, the artist can have his batik design dyed and he is given all the information and help that he wants. This, of course, means a great deal to the beginner who knows little or no chemistry, some knowledge of which is quite essential to one who would become a really expert dyer. Utensils and materials. Before going into the details of the actual batik process, it will perhaps be a good plan to give a description of the necessary tools and their management, wax, and various other essential requirements. The tools chiefly used are the native instrument called the tjonting, the brush, and the European wax pencil. Of these three, the tjonting and the brush are most generally used, the wax pencil being a somewhat clumsy affair and hard to handle. The use of batik in interior decoration. Tjontings. The tjonting used in America is a modification of the Javanese instrument. It is a little cup-shaped tool with a handle set at right angles to the base on one side, and on the other is a fine spout arrangement. Through this spout the hot wax is drawn by capillary attraction when the point is brought in contact with the material. In the best type of tjonting, the spout is tapered toward the point. This shaping is in order that the volume of wax, small though it is, will hold the heat longer than if the entire length of the tube were as minute as the hole through which it is finally drawn. In batiking with the tjonting, the wax is scooped out of the pot in which it is being kept hot, and the instrument is wiped off carefully before it is brought near the fabric. It does not do to take a chance on having a drop of wax fall on the work, as it is next to impossible to remove it entirely. Some people hold their tjonting directly over a flame to reheat cooling wax, but it is a very unwise practice, as there is a grave danger of hurting the spout and a likelihood of the wax becoming charred. If the wax does get too cold to work with, or the spout gets stopped up with chilled wax, hold the bowl of the tjonting in the hot wax in the melting pot, and it will be found that the trouble is remedied instantly. If you have been unlucky enough to get grit or some other clogging substance in the spout, the insertion of a fine hair wire will usually clear it. This is almost a major operation though, and should be performed most carefully, as it is a delicate instrument you are handling and it costs money to repair it, even if you are in the neighborhood of someone who is able to resolder it. So fragile is the point of these fine instruments that even the sudden check caused by the rough fiber of some materials is sufficient to ruin the tip. When not in use, the safest plan is to hang it in a box of its own, or at least keep it in a place sacred to itself, with its spout upwards, so that there is no likelihood of accidental pressure to bend it out of shape. This careful handling of the tjonting is emphasized because, while the initial cost of a good instrument may seem high, it is a most satisfactory tool to use, and with proper attention it should last a lifetime. One that is in use today has been used steadily for the past 12 years and looks good for holding many more pints of melted wax. Cleaning the tjonting. Dyeing of textile. The frontispiece shows a piece in which all the line work was done with a tjonting, the brush only being used to fill in the big surfaces, after the various dippings. The design is an adaptation from the Chinese, inspired by the decoration on a Coromandel screen. The panel is worked out in 7 colors, 2 golds, 2 greens, red, brown, and black. It was designed by the writer and executed by Emil Wiekers and himself. The spout openings come in various sizes, and with the finest almost hairlines can be produced. The wax when ready to flow forms an infinitesimal globule which will run freely when just touched to the material and skimmed as lightly as possible over the surface. A heavy hand will drop the point so that it touches the fabric. The moment it does this, the hole is automatically sealed and the wax cannot flow. Many Batiks are not able to obtain a tianting and would not if they could, preferring to do their waxing entirely with brushes. Brushes, properly trimmed and of various sizes, will certainly give very satisfactory results to the careful worker. Of course, the minute line possible with the tianting is impossible to achieve with a brush, though a line as narrow as the 16th of an inch can be made by a practiced craftsman. Use of brush. The all-over floral design shown facing page 36, designed by the writer and executed by Miss E. Shirtleff, was made in 6 colors. This panel was done in the blue group explained in the chapter on dyeing. The outline of the flowers is in the original white of the material. The petals of the flowers range in color from straw yellow to orange, with some of the outer ones in moss green. The background has a wave design worked out in all the different colors used in the flowers and an extra shade of dark green. The waxing of this piece was done entirely with the brush and has no line of a greater width than 1/16 of an inch. Floral design entirely executed with a brush. Preparing brushes. This fine work is easier with shaped brush. This shaping is done without much difficulty by dipping the brush, preferably a good sable one, into hot wax, and, without pressing the globule formation out of shape, gently wiping the excess of wax from the distended bristles. Allow this to cool and when hard, trim to a point with a sharp knife. Melt the cold wax out by dipping in the wax pot and you will have a brush that will be more manageable and will hold more wax for the size of its point than one would have with the regular unshaped brush. For covering big surfaces, 1 or 2 flat soft-haired varnish brushes will be needed. Wax mixtures. Crackle for waxing. Beeswax with a mixture of white paraffin wax is used by most Batiks, the proportion varying according to the brittleness desired. This of course is best worked out to suit the individual Batiks requirements, and after a little experimenting one soon learns to get a satisfactory mixture. 1 part paraffin to 5 parts of beeswax will give the consistency of medium to produce the crackle surface so popular with many artists in America. Pure beeswax cracks very little and will stand the highest temperature when in the dye bath, and inversely the larger proportion of paraffin used the more the medium will crackle, and the cooler the dye bath must be used if one does not want one's design to melt away. When no crackle at all is desired, the solution can be made more pliable by the addition of rosin. Use this, however, in hot dyes only, for it has unpleasant mannerisms, one of which is to increase the mixture's brittleness when it is made to undergo a cold plunge. Whilst on the subject of wax, a word may be well said regarding the care that should be taken to keep water out of the neighborhood of the wax pot. One has only to allow a drop of water to get itself into the melted wax just once, to find out what a horribly messy spattering and explosion can result. One may gain in understanding and be able to sympathize with long-suffering relatives who declare that batik is such a messy business, but it is hardly worth it. Of course, it need not happen if a few precautions are taken, and it is perhaps better to take care at first than to run the risk of becoming unpopular in the household. Another warning that may be of service to the worker in the country. Do not apply wax, in summertime, seated near an open window. A really true story tells how a batiker was sitting coolly working by a window and was visited by a solitary bee, who took a good look and one sniff at the wax pot and flew away. He returned immediately, however, with all his relations who swarmed gaily all over the wax pot, and the worker, to the great discomfort of the visited and the visitors. Exploding in boiling wax can hardly be a comfortable end to a busy life. Heating apparatus. To complete the outfit, one also needs a small agate pan in which to melt the wax. One about 4 inches deep will answer best, and some sort of heating apparatus. A kerosene stove should not be used unless one is willing to blacken one's utensils and most probably one's self. Gas or an alcohol lamp with an adjustable burner are more satisfactory than an electric attachment, as the ability to regulate the heat makes for great comfort when one wants to keep the wax at an even temperature. Of course, if necessity demands it, any heat producer available can be used. An electric flat iron turned upside down can even be pressed into service, although the inconvenience of having to keep one eye on the melting pot is great, when one wishes to give all one's attention to the design, but if it is not watched, the result may be a most uncomfortable smoking out. Work in a warm room or near the stove and it will be found that the wax when in the tianting will chill less quickly and will consequently be more manageable. These little hints may seem of small importance, but it is as well to take advantage of everything that will make the actual tool handling easier. There are likely to be troubles and misadventures enough with the rest of the process. Dyes removing stain. A great many people seem to be under the impression that the ordinary household dyes that are on the market are not good enough to use in batik work. There is a strong prejudice against diamond dyes, but there is no reason for it, as these dyes, when used according to directions, produce admirable results and are most practical for the beginner who is not in need of large quantities. For anyone going extensively into dyeing, it is rather an expensive way of working, and it is better to buy the dyes in bulk direct from the manufacturer. Rubber gloves will give some protection to the hands when handling materials in the dye bath, but if, in spite of care, the hands or clothing become stained, soda or ammonia in the washing water will prove helpful. Lava soap is very good for removing stains from the skin. Dye tubs. One of the chief helps in successful dyeing is a good vessel for use as a dye bath. If one is possibly obtainable, the best thing to use is a seamless copper tub. This utensil, however, is not within the reach of every student, and it is quite possible to do satisfactory work in a good agate or enamel pan. Galvanized iron is safe to use with most dyes, but in time the acid used with some colors will eat into the metal. Be sure to get a big enough vessel, as disaster follows goods that are crowded in the dye bath. A thermometer is quite a necessity, and one should also have a glass spoon and a stirring rod. For this latter, a couple of smooth round pieces of wood can successfully be substituted. These are used for lifting and manipulating the material in the dye bath. Fabrics batik can be done on all kinds of woven material, such as cotton, silk, velvet, wool, mixed goods or leather. It is rather difficult to get satisfactory results on cotton owing to the fact that cotton dyes have to be boiled in order to attain any degree of brilliancy, and of course boiling is not practical when one is dealing with waxed material. Japanese habutei silk is perhaps the easiest fabric to use and best for beginners' experiments, as the wax penetrates easily and it takes color well. This applies to chiffon and similar sheer materials, but of course their delicacy makes them harder to handle. Fiber silks, being composed of both animal and vegetable matter, should be dyed in mixed goods dyes or should be first dipped in a bath of cotton dye, and then immersed in a dye for silk, of a similar shade. Very heavy silks and velvets are magnificent when batiked, but they should be sent to the professional finishers to be treated when the piece is completed, as it takes a great deal of effort and considerable skill on the part of the amateur to finish a large heavy silk panel or to raise the flattened pile of velvet. Taffeta silk and very heavy satin are not good fabrics for the batik process, owing to the loading used in their manufacture. Tjontings. Ever since the batik art has been practiced by Occidentals, there has been a search for a tool to replace the tjonting, or perhaps not so much to replace, as to develop an improved edition. But after many trials, it seems that the tjonting in its original form, with just a slight variation in its handle, is after all the best instrument for fine line and dot work. Price of tjontings. The Dutch edition of the original Javanese tjontings is better than the native tool in two particulars. First, it is made out of heavier metal and is consequently much stronger, and the second distinct improvement is the remodeled handle, which replaces the little tied-on bamboo affair. Of course, when the difference in price is taken into consideration, the Javanese tjonting stands away above any other. It costs from 1 to 10 cents in Dutch money, which is the equivalent of 5 tjontings for 2 cents, American money, whilst the Dutch model tjonting made here in New York is sold for from $5 to $7 a piece. Various kinds of tjontings are shown in the accompanying illustrations. 1. The original Javanese tjonting. 2. The Dutch tjonting. 3 and 4. Belgian tjontings. 5. The Walther glass tjonting. 6. The wax pencil. The first two of these types have already been described. 3. A Belgian tjonting. This tool has a few very good points, but the trouble is that whilst each factor in itself is good, the combination of them in the tjonting is not desirable. The cup of this instrument is made out of a brass ball, out of which a segment is taken to form the top opening. On one side, not quite at the lowest point of the ball, the spout is placed, while the handle is fastened opposite to it on the other side. This placing of the spout has one great advantage, as any impurity in the wax will settle below the spout opening, and clogging is less liable. The spout is made of solid brass plate, it is tapered and the nozzle has a fine opening. The only disadvantage to it is that it cannot be shaped, that is, it cannot be bent up or down at the will of the worker. The main objection to this tool is, however, that it is rather heavy by reason of its very solid cup and it does not balance well in the hand. Besides the before-mentioned advantage of the spout being unlikely to clog, the greatest thing in its favor is the long time that it holds the wax hot, on account of its round shape, the small opening on top, and above all, because of the thickness of the walls of the cup, the wax retains the heat longer than in any other tuanting made. For a second type of Belgian tuanting. This tool very much resembles some of the first tuantings made in this country. It is not very good, mainly on account of the spout, which is not tapered, and another weak point is the cup, which holds only a very little wax. Various types of tuantings. 5. The Walther glass tuanting. This is a German invention and is certainly no improvement on any existing type of instrument. In fact, it is a clumsy and awkward tool, difficult to handle, and being made of glass it is of course, very fragile. 6. The wax pencil. This is another German attempt to replace the tuanting and is made in two separate parts. First, the metal cylinder which holds the wax and replaces the cup and spout of the tuanting, and the second part is the wooden holder, which slips over the cylinder and serves as a handle. The cylinder itself is of brass, shaped to a point at one end and at the other is closed with a brass stopper. The pointed end is fitted with a fine needle which is held in place by a minute spiral spring. This needle closes up the opening in the tube and prevents the molten wax from flowing out. When a flow of wax is desired, the pressure of the point of the pencil on the fabric will push back the needle and release the wax. To fill the tool, the wax is scraped into fine chips, or better still, cut into a thin bar, and inserted in the tube and closed in with the stopper. The wooden handle is then slipped back and the tool heated in a flame to melt the wax. When the instrument is sufficiently hot, the handle is slipped back in position, and work can be started. A great drawback to this tool is that it gets very hot, so hot in fact, that the wooden handle is likely to char, as is shown in the one illustrated, and after working some time one has to stop in order to give the handle a chance to cool. Very fine work cannot be done with this instrument and the opinions as to its usefulness are very divided. Some people say the tool is as good as useless, whilst others cannot or will not work with anything else. This is most probably because they never had a good tuanting. If they had, they would soon put their wax pencils in the discard. The main thing in favor of the tool is that it makes very little wax smoke in the room. But this is its only virtue and it does not have a monopoly of that, as any batiker, with a little care, can keep his or her wax as hot as it is needed without having a column of smoke constantly coming out of the wax pot. Although much time has been spent and trouble been taken in endeavors to supply a tool which would be better and more practical than the tuanting, it can be safely said that the original appliance has stood up successfully against all competitors and nothing better has yet been made. The batik process: preparation of material. The first step in the batik process is to prepare the material. This is nothing more elaborate than a thorough washing, which will result in freeing the goods from any artificial loading and will shrink the piece, and the size will not be an unpleasant surprise when the work is finished, and one will not find that the triangle especially cut for a lampshade will not fit by an inch or so. If one is using dyed in the piece goods, that is, material already dyed one color when bought, it is a good plan to boil it for 10 minutes, in order to remove any loose color, and to make sure that no unexpected color will run and mix itself with the dye in which the fabric is being dipped. The drying and ironing of the material makes it ready for the application of the design. Scarf batiked by Hazel Burnham Slaughter. Application of design: folding materials. Some people, when making a simple design, draw directly on the material with wax, but it is usually the best plan to make the design on paper first, together with a colored sketch to be used as a guide when the dyeing part of the process is reached. In using transparent material, the design can of course be placed underneath it and the pattern traced directly through, but this is not practical with heavier fabrics. When waxing very thin material such as chiffon, it can be doubled or in some cases even folded in quarters, laid perfectly flat and the wax applied. This shortcut was used in the batik illustrated facing page 50. It was designed and executed by Hazel Burnham Slaughter, and it is a representative piece of the beautiful work done by her on sheer materials. It is made with only 2 colors, the original color of the chiffon, a very light tan, and a soft mellow red. The design is an arrangement of free ornament, floral and animal life. It is a freehand all-over design, and repeats itself 4 times, having been folded as described above. This folding process only has satisfactory results when very thin material is used, as the wax will not penetrate through 2 or more thicknesses if the fabric has any weight at all. The most satisfactory means of transferring the design is to prick the outline with a pin, or wheel perforator. Place the perforated paper on the fabric and rub charcoal through the holes. If one cannot obtain any charcoal, though one must be far indeed from the madding crowd to be out of reach of even charcoal tablets, lead pencil dust can be used, though it is not at all to be recommended owing to the dirty smears that it makes when rubbed. Be very careful to have the material quite straight and place the design on it squarely, or the final effect may be very twisted and distorted. If the pricking has left a jagged edge to the holes in the paper, rub the perforations lightly with sandpaper in order that the charcoal may go through cleanly and easily. Redrawing of design: when the finished work is to be in more than 1 color, it is advisable to strengthen the charcoal outline with pencil or Conti crayon No. 2, otherwise it is washed off in the first dipping. This redrawing is not necessary if one wishes to have an undid outline edging the different colors, as in that case the outline of the whole design will be drawn in wax, and this will permanently indicate the pattern. Preventing the wax from sticking: the American method of working differs from the Javanese in the fact that the native hangs her material vertically in front of her when she is waxing her design, whilst the American is decidedly more comfortable with his material flat on a table. Usually it is stretched on a frame or canvas stretcher to prevent it from coming in actual contact with the surface of the table whilst the wax is being applied. If it is not kept clear, it will be found that when an attempt is made to lift the textile, on the completion of the waxing process, it will be sticking in places and the wax torn in consequence. The effect of this damage will be that in dyeing the color will penetrate from the back, and the material exposed by the breaks will turn out to be some shade quite unplanned for in the original scheme. For very big pieces, however, it is rather impractical to use a frame, and as an alternative to stretching, the fabric can be waxed on a table which is covered with thin smooth paper. With careful lifting, little or no harm need be done to the wax, but in any case it is well to make a thorough examination of the reverse side in order to be sure that there are no exposed surfaces that should be retouched. Some artists work with a sheet of glass under their material, instead of paper, but this, whilst having the advantage of not sticking as much, has the great objection of rapidly cooling the wax with which one is working, and cool wax does not penetrate the material properly. The right way to hold the tianting: the use of the brush for filling spaces, clean outline, handling the tianting. A clean edge to the design is obtained with more certainty if the flat masses are outlined with a fine brush, or preferably with a tianting, before being filled in with the larger brushes. Where the work is done with a tianting, it is difficult to have the fabric stretched on a frame, as this tool is used with the palm of the hand resting on a steady surface. The illustration facing page 54 shows the way to hold the tianting when the work is laid flat on the table. The wrist and the lower part of the hand rest on the table. The tianting is held between the thumb and the two first fingers, while the remaining fingers act as an additional support. All small movements can be made with the wrist remaining stationary. For big curves, the hand and arm are slowly moved in the required direction, keeping the tianting at an even level. Though in the beginning this may seem difficult, it will be found that after a little practice, it will be quite easy to make even and regular lines. Having covered up with wax all the parts of the design which are to remain white or the original color of the fabric, if an already dyed piece is used for the foundation, it is now ready for the first dye bath. Select the lightest shade in the color sketch for the initial dyeing. To be sure of getting the desired shade, it is well to test a sample of the fabric. To do this, wet the piece and immerse it in the dye for a few moments. When it is dry, it will be several shades lighter than when it is wet. One can get an approximate idea of the color that a wet piece will be when it is dried, by looking at it against the light. The simplest batiks, of course, are those in which only one color is used and consequently only one dipping is required. Details of dyeing and the matter of color schemes will be treated at length elsewhere in this book. After dipping, the material should be rinsed thoroughly in lukewarm water. Avoid the use of cold water, especially when another dyeing is to follow, as the cold will cause the wax to become brittle and crack, and unintentional crackling is a sign of poor craftsmanship. If the batik is to be in only one color, it is now ready for the removal of the wax, which is a simple business, consisting of rinsing the fabric very thoroughly in gasoline or carboner. More elaborate color schemes are produced by a repetition of the process, simply covering up with fresh wax the parts one wishes to retain in the shade of the last dyed color. This re-waxing, dipping and rinsing is continued until all the colors that the scheme demands are obtained, and then the wax is removed as described. Gasoline. A word here on the use and misuse of gasoline may be in order. Gasolining should be done very thoroughly. One of the faults common to all amateurs is insufficient rinsing and the fabric still stiff with wax is placed on the market as a finished product. Often the lovely softness of a drapery will be lost and a papery quality substituted just because there have not been a sufficient number of gasoline baths used. Precautions. When possible, gasoline should be used out of doors, although if proper precautions are taken, there is no reason why people should be nervous about using it in the house. In the first place, do not use it in a room in which there is a fire burning, and do not imagine the room is safe for a lighted match immediately after the vessel containing the gasoline has been removed. Gasoline fumes are heavier than air and if undisturbed will hang low in the room for some time. It is therefore a good plan to have the window open slightly, at the bottom as well as at the top, in order to create a current of air. The hot air rising and the fresh air coming in at the bottom of the window will soon disperse the fumes. Gasoline economy. Have the gasoline in an earthenware vessel. Enamelware easily gets chipped and the exposed iron when touched by the hand may give a slight electric shock, as electricity is sometimes generated through rubbing the fabric. It is well, in any case, to avoid hard rubbing and to use as little friction as possible, taking particular care on bright clear days when the air itself seems charged with electricity. Gasoline can be used over and over again. The last baths for one batik, containing only a small amount of dissolved wax, can be used for the first bath next time, and with an apparatus similar to that illustrated, it is quite easy to run off the dissolved wax, which sinks, being heavier than the gasoline, and save only the clear fluid. The last stage of the process is the ironing, which needs no more description than the suggestion that the work is placed between papers. This hint may prevent the streaking which sometimes ruins a batik that has successfully survived the various stages of a decorated textiles creation. C. Clean gasoline. D. Dissolved wax tank for separating wax from gasoline. Successful dyeing. Temperature of dye bath. A good deal of the failure of success attending the dyeing of a batik depends on the temperature of the dye bath. Too hot water will of course melt the wax, and a too cold bath will make it so brittle that it will crack in unexpected and undesired places. The accompanying scale of temperatures shows the corresponding degrees of heat on different thermometers. When pure beeswax has been used, the dye bath can be brought to and maintained at a heat of 110 degrees Fahrenheit, corresponding to 46 degrees centigrade or 36 degrees Reaumur. If a mixture of paraffin has been used, it is not advisable to have the dye at a higher temperature than 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Table of temperatures centigrade Realma Fahrenheit 30 24 86 31 24.8 87.8 32 25.6 89.6 33 26.4 91.4 34 27.2 93.2 35 28 95 36 28.8 96.8 37 29.6 98.6 38 30.4 100.4 39 31.2 102.2 40 32 104 41 32.8 105.8 42 33.6 107.6 43 34.4 109.4 44 35.2 111.2 45 36 113 46 36.8 114.8 The use of too much dye streaks in dyeing. A fault with amateur dyers is that they often use a great deal more dye than is really needed. By this, it is not meant that too much solution is used, but too much of the actual coloring matter. One 10-cent package of dye will dye a pound of material. Some fabrics, such as a lightweight silk, run about 16 yards to the pound. To avoid any waste of dye, it is a good plan to prepare a concentrated solution in a small pan and use it with care and economy. Do not add it all at once to the water in the large vessel, but rather make a weak bath into which the piece is put, after having been rinsed in clear water and squeezed out. When the color is all taken up from the bath, remove the fabric and add more of the concentrated solution. Do this several times rather than impatiently pour in the whole strength. When finally the desired intensity of color is reached, it will be found that the dyes are faster and a great deal less color will have been used than would have been the case otherwise. If careful judgment has been used, the water will be practically clear at the end of the proceedings. Another good reason for not using too strong a bath is that with a weaker solution it is much easier to avoid the streaks that annoy the inexperienced dyer. The use of too small a vessel is a frequent cause of uneven dyeing. The material should literally swim in the tub so that no dye can possibly settle in the folds. And for this same reason it is essential to keep the goods stirred the whole time they are in the dye. Rinsing after the material has been removed from the dye bath, it should be rinsed very thoroughly and dried. A large piece can be quickly dried when one knows how. Do not wring it on any account or the wax will be broken in 1,000 pieces. Old sheets and towels can be requisitioned with good effect. Wrap the rinsed material in these to absorb the heaviest of the moisture and to prevent dripping. If the material is allowed to drain and has not been rinsed properly, the appearance of the dreaded streaks will at once show the reason why the rinsing part of the process is emphasized. When thus blotted, the material will soon dry when hung over a waxed non-absorbent clothes line. An unwaxed line will sometimes leave a mark where the fabric has touched it. Rewaxing the material should be thoroughly dry before the second waxing is applied. If an attempt is made to do it while the goods are still damp, it will be found that the wax does not penetrate so well, and consequently, in the second dipping the dye will seep in through the back and spoil the color which the wax was intended to preserve. A crackle effect can be produced all over the design by crushing the fabric, more or less gently, according to the amount of color that one wishes to allow to penetrate, just before the last dipping. A local crackle can be obtained similarly, by crushing only those parts where a broken-up surface to the design is required. The occasional use of crackle will help the artist a great deal. For instance, it may happen that one of the light colors in the design may turn out to make too glaring a spot to be entirely harmonious, and in such an event one may get pleasing results by deliberately crackling that particular spot and thus tone down its brightness. Painting in colors instead of dipping their batik several times. Some people paint in some of the colors. As a rule, this local application of dyes is resorted to when multicolored batiks are desired and when red and blue are used in the same color scheme. The results of this method of dyeing are not, however, very satisfactory, as it always shows in the finished piece. No matter how small the painted-in spots may be, they always seem to stand out and do not harmonize with the general scheme, the way colors do that have been dyed over each other, as, having been dyed over each other, the darker tones are a composite of the colors dyed previously, and the whole effect naturally shows a pleasing relationship of color. The Javanese occasionally put in their extra color by this means, but with no greater success than the American artists and the finest craftsmen there are not using the painting process at all. Another drawback is that not only are the colors inharmonious, but the moment you try to paint in any large surface, that is, any area bigger than a square inch, the color is always uneven. This is because the moment the silk is touched with the brush, that individual spot gets the full strength of the dye, which fades out toward the edges, and no matter how much patching up is done, it is impossible to get a perfectly even surface such as can be obtained by dipping. Of course, the dye when painted in is cool and the colors will not be as fast as when the fibers of the material slowly absorb the hot dye. Among other disadvantages, is the fact that the spot which is to be colored always has to be first outlined in wax to prevent the dye from spreading. This gives a light outline round a dark surface, which, while not spoiling some designs, has an unpleasing effect more often than not. Spring by C. Bertram Hartmann and Pieter Mijer color groups. Batiks in one or two colors are of course much simpler than those in which a variety of tones are required, but with a little thought and practice many colors can be used together on the same piece. The simplest color scheme consists of an arrangement of yellow, green and blue. Always start dyeing the lightest color first and work through the color plan to the darkest shade. For instance, in a piece where yellow, red and black are desired, the dye baths are arranged in the same order. In the use of dyes it is necessary to arrange the color ranges into two groups, which we will call the group of the reds and the group of the blues. The group of the reds starts with yellow and its variations and hues, then red and variations of red, and lastly purple. The main colors of the blue group are yellow, green, blue, and purple. This division of color will be readily understood by those who have some knowledge of the subject. It will be clear to them that red can be dyed over yellow, and purple can be dyed over red in its turn, whilst it would be impossible to produce a good blue or green on top of a previously dyed red. This same idea holds good in the group of the blues. Spring the panel illustrated facing page 64, designed by Bertram Hartmann and executed by him and the writer, is one of the early batiks designed by this artist. It was dyed in the group of the blues and no reds were used in the making of it. It was dipped 8 times, the original white of the material making the 9th color. The waxing of this piece was done entirely with the brush, no tianting being used, and gives a fair idea of the fine work that can be done with the brush, if one considers that the size of the original panel is only about 40 by 60 inches. Extracting color for some designs, it may be necessary to use both red and green in the same piece. In this case, the colors of the blue group should first be dyed, until the darkest shade called for in the color scheme has been obtained, and then the color can be extracted from the places where the shades that belong in the red group are demanded. With the strong color extracted, it is possible to get the opposing colors quite successfully, starting in with the lightest tones and working through to the darkest in the manner already described. This bleaching can be done with a solution of ammonia or washing soda. Both these mediums have to be used with the greatest care, as either of them will eat into the wax to a certain extent and consequently allow the next color to penetrate and affect the previous dyes. It is wise, therefore, to inspect the waxed off parts very carefully before re-dyeing and retouch the places where the wax has been destroyed. A good plan is to keep a strict eye on the wax in any case, in order to prevent surprise attacks by dye on the material through places that have become weakened. Naturally, the wax is likely to suffer when the fabric has to be handled as much as it has to be, when being dyed a number of colors. Some people, when they wish to have opposing colors, such as blue and red, in the same design, resort to the native method of removing the wax entirely after each dipping and recovering the parts already dyed. This takes a great deal longer and the wax needs very careful dissolving, as the fresh dye will not take unless every particle of it is removed from the fabric, and even then it is not easy to get a successful dipping, as the gasoline used for the dissolving is more or less greasy, and of course grease has no affinity with water. White lines, or lines the color of the original fabric, are apt to show too, if one has overstepped the boundary when covering up the first color, prior to the second waxing. When dyeing a batik with one color over the other, the second color dyed will always be affected by the tone of the first dipping. For instance, suppose your material is dyed yellow the first time, and blue the second, the fabric will not come out as a true blue, but according to the strength of the blue dye, will be either light green, green-blue, or if an intense blue has been used, a blue-green will result. It will be found that similar variations will occur when red is dyed over yellow, which will give shades of orange, and gradations of purple will be obtained when red is dyed over blue. By following the arrows in the above chart, it will easily be seen which colors should be mixed together in order to produce a given color. The proportion of dye used is indicated by the connecting lines, The shortest line shows which color should predominate. A careful study of the accompanying color mixing chart will give the reader an idea of the way various shades are produced from the primary colors. The composition of color. The three primary colors are red, yellow and blue. Primary and secondary colors. Red mixed with yellow produces orange. Yellow mixed with blue produces green. Blue mixed with red produces purple. The orange, green and purple are known as the secondary colors, and by mixing either the three primary or the three secondary colors together, gray is obtained. It would therefore be quite possible to dye successfully with a stock consisting of only the three primary colors, but it certainly would be a waste of time. For several years the writer worked with 5 colors, red, blue, yellow, brown and black, and with these produced the various tones necessary in a multicolored batik. It is, however, advisable to have a few more shades in stock, and with the following selection it is possible to make the widest range of color in a very short while, and the writer has found that the best results are obtained with the following dyes and dye manufacturers: Rockeline 2578J, National Aniline and Chemical Company, Inc., 21 Burling Street, NYC. Orange Extra, 2578J, National Aniline and Chemical Company, Inc., 21 Burling Street, NYC. Isoflavine, Bachmeyer and Company, 438 West 37th Street, NY. Chinoline Yellow, Bachmeyer and Company, 438 West 37th Street, NY. Victoria Green, Dix David Company, 299 Broadway, NY. Acid Green, Bachmeyer and Company, 438 Watts 37th Street, NY. Indigo Tin, Bachmeyer and Company, 438 Watts 37th Street, NY. Oxaline Black, H. Metz and Company, 122 Hudson Street, NY. Alphenol Brown B, National Aniline and Chemical Company, Incorporated. Magenta, H. Metz and Company, 122 Hudson Street, NY. Acids. Most dyes used in batiking are set with either sulfuric or acetic acid. The above list is all used with the latter, which is preferable, as sulfuric is very dangerous. The slightest trace left in the fabric will, after a while, rot the fiber. Acetic acid does not harm the silk, but with some dyes it is too strong and will change the color. If this should be the case, either tartaric or oxalic acid can be used. In most cases the acid is added to the bath of the diluted dye rather than to the concentrated solution, the exception being in the case of the Victoria Green and the Magenta. These have to be dissolved in acetic acid before they are put in the water. Acetic acid is obtainable from any druggist. Some dyes are set with salt and it is used with many of the household dyes which are always sold with directions on the package. When buying direct from the manufacturers, their chemists will always give the necessary information as to which acids should be used with the various colors. This book is not intended to be a technical treatise, and readers who wish to know more of the chemistry of dyeing are advised to study Professor Chas. E. Pellou's Dyes and Dyeing. Tertiary colors. The tertiary colors are all in the brown tones, and the following table may prove a useful guide. Blue and orange and yellow produce gold. Red and green and blue produce blue-brown. Yellow and purple and red produce red-brown. Green and orange and red produce orange-brown. Orange and blue and purple produce bronze. Purple and yellow and green produce green-brown. It would not be possible to give weights and measures of the different colors, as such specks of color will change the tone, but anyone wanting to mix colors for matching will find that it takes very little time to get a color once he has decided what the nearest color is, on the color chart. By studying this, it is easy to find out what color should be added to produce any given shade. Matching colors. The most difficult problem in dyeing is the matching of colors when the materials are different. For instance, it is not easy, on account of the difference in surface, to match a charmeuse to a given plush or velvet. For beginners, it is always best to start experimental dyeing by daylight, unless one has a very white light, as the yellow of artificial light takes all, or very nearly all, the yellow out of a color, with the result that where one at night has a beautiful blue, this blue will turn to green in the daytime, and lavender will invariably turn gray. Color relation. Yellow is sometimes rather a difficult color to manage, that is to say that if, in a batik, the original white of the material is to be used as a background for a design in yellow, it will be very difficult to see where the white finishes and the yellow of the decoration begins. While the material is wet, the design will show, but when it is dry, by some mysterious trick of the eye, it has apparently vanished. It is therefore advisable to use a second color to offset either the white or the yellow. If, however, a second color is not desired in the batik and consequently have nothing to offset the yellow, the following hint will save the situation: a little blue or a little red, mixed with the yellow solution, will enable the yellow to hold its own on the white ground. The slightest touch of either of these colors will have the desired effect. When the color scheme calls for a yellow and a blue as separate color units in the design, and the blue is wanted after the yellow dipping, the effect of the yellow on the blue, which produces green, can be diminished by dyeing first a very weak solution of magenta over the yellow. Rinse the material thoroughly, then proceed to dip in the blue dye bath. In doing this, it is necessary to be very careful with the magenta, as it is a very strong color and an overdose will be liable to produce a purple instead of a blue. Of course, if the original yellow is very intense, it is not possible to neutralize it in this way, and the bleaching process will have to be used, in order to obtain the blue. Fig. 1 fig. 2 fig. 3 successive stages in the making of a batik, and this is another good thing to remember in making a multicolored batik, which is to have white as part of the color arrangement. It is always advisable to dye the original white of the fabric some very pale shade, either gray, light tan, pale blue or even pink. If the material is used in its original pure white state, a pleasing effect will never result, as the white will always stand out as a glaring hard spot when it is next to colors that are dyed over each other and consequently blend harmoniously. This preliminary all-over dyeing will tie in the white and make it in key with the rest of the scheme. The series of photographs shown here represents the successive stages of a batik in the making. The original fabric is white silk, and the first step is the pouncing on of the design with charcoal, which is then strengthened with pencil. With the tianting, this outline is then waxed, Fig. 1. The spots which are to be white in the completed design are now filled in with the brush, and the material is given its first dyeing, yellow, Fig. 2. Now all the parts that are to stay yellow are covered off with the wax. When this waxing is completed, the material is dipped in light blue, which being dyed over yellow, will produce light green, Fig. 3. After drying, all that has to stay green is covered off with wax, Fig. 4. The final dipping is in red. The last picture, Fig. 5, is the completed piece after the wax has been removed by gasolining. This photograph distinctly shows, in its variations of tone, the different colors that were used. Fig. 4. Fig. 5. Successive stages in the making of a batik. The value of a die record. A die record is an invaluable asset to a batiker. It is very little trouble to make, and the time spent on it will easily be saved when future work is to be speeded up or samples are being made. A record book will prove its value in many ways, particularly if the batiks made are liable to be reordered, as for instance, when gowns are decorated for the trade, or if the making of one batik leads to a demand for a second, which perhaps is wanted with the same color effects although not the same design. It is a good plan, therefore, to leave an extra strip of material on the piece that is to be batiked, or to pin a piece to the fabric which is to be decorated and let it go through all the different baths and processes, each time taking off a small sample of the new color to be pasted in the record book. Design, sorceress. Designer, a crisp. Batiked by P. Mijer and a crisp. Date, the 2nd of January, 1918. No. Sample temp. Color time in bath acid remarks 1 white 105 to 110 yellow cream 20 minutes. Acetic 2 yellow cream 110 salmon pink 20 minutes. Acetic 3 flesh color 110 light blue 15 minutes. Acetic 4 gray blue 105 90 strong blue 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Slight crackle obtained by reduction of temperature. 4 am blue 100 bleach 15 to 20 min. Ammonia. The batik is dipped in ammonia and rinsed for an hour. 5 gray 110 gold 40 minutes. Acetic 6 gold 110 blue 60 minutes. Acetic 7 bluish gold 110 red 50 minutes. Acetic 9 Bordeaux 90 110 black blue 60 minutes. 60 minutes. Blue added to improve tone of black. 10 black material used, crepe de chine. Price per yard, $5. Length of piece, 13 feet, 4 inches. Height of piece, 9 feet. Gasoline, 15 gallons. 3 baths. Beeswax, 5 lbs. The use of batik for costumers will be seen from the record quoted here. Every detail is marked down: the temperature, time of dyeing, price of material and where it was bought, in fact any little item that may be of help later. A full explanation of this sample page may be of service to some readers. The record shows the process of dyeing in the making of the sorceress panel, shown facing page 78. The silk used for this panel was a very heavy Japanese crepe and the design was worked out in 9 colors. That is to say, it was dipped 8 times, the 9th being the original white of the silk. The only places where this original white shows is in a few little flowers in the branches of the trees, and these, on account of the many times the piece was dyed, have so much crackle in them that they do not appear as pure white. The piece was first dyed a very light creamy yellow color, this tone being composed of yellow, a speck of blue and a speck of orange. The mixture of these colors produces gold and a much diluted solution results in a straw yellow. The temperature for this bath was between 105 degrees and 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and the time for dyeing about 20 minutes. After having been rinsed and dried, the parts of the design that were wanted the straw color were covered in wax, the largest surface being the scarf of the sorceress. The panel was now ready for the second dipping. This was a light salmon pink, which over the straw yellow gave the flesh color for the face and body. This tone also appears in the light outline of the smoke and clouds. This salmon color was made of orange and yellow mixed and was used very light. Temperature 110 degrees, time, about 20 minutes. The third bath was blue. This was used in the mountain in the background and in some of the leaves in the foreground on the piece. The blue was used pure, but not very strong. With the flesh color, this gave a grayish blue. Temperature 110 degrees. Time 15 minutes. Sorceress by Arthur Crisp and Pieter Mijer. The fourth color was the same blue, only much stronger, and in this the trees in the mountain, the outlines of the mountain and the stems of the bigger leaves were dyed. The fabric was in this bath altogether about 40 minutes. The first half of this period the temperature of the dye was about 105 degrees and was reduced to 90 degrees for the last 20 minutes. This difference in the temperature was made in order to make the wax brittle and obtain a slight crackle to allow the penetration of the color. The crackle effect was not desired all over the design, so a second covering of wax was applied in some parts, after the material had been thoroughly dried. The face and body of the figure, in particular, were carefully gone over, as these parts had to remain as little as possible affected by the darker colors. The panel was now dipped in an ammonia bath to extract the color from the parts not covered by wax. This took from 15 to 20 minutes with a temperature of 100 degrees Fahrenheit. When the color in the fabric was reduced to a light gray, the piece was transferred from the ammonia bath to a tub of clear water at the same temperature, and rinsed thoroughly for at least an hour, in order to remove every trace of the ammonia. After drying, the whole panel was carefully gone over to close all undesired cracks that had come during the color extracting process. These were mainly in the figure and the scarf. No grey was used in the panel, therefore after the filling in of the cracks, the piece was ready for the fifth bath. This was the gold used for the foreground, and it also makes the highlights in the leaves and in the tree trunks. This gold was obtained by mixing yellow, orange and blue, with the yellow as the dominant color. Temperature, 110 degrees. Time, 40 minutes. The sixth bath was the same gold solution, strengthened up with blue but without the addition of any more orange or yellow. This color was used in the leaves, some parts of the trees, the wings of the parrot and the solid color of the skirt. Temperature, 110 degrees. Time, 60 minutes. The seventh dipping was red, roqueline. This color was used pure and over the bluish gold of the previously dyed colors, it appeared a deep rich red, almost a Bordeaux. The turban, the vase, parts of the parrot's wings, the flowers in the foreground and the borders at the top and bottom of the panel are all in this tone. Temperature, 110 degrees. Time, 50 minutes. After waxing all these parts, the other covered parts were inspected once more and all damaged places and objectionable cracks repaired. This completed, the panel was ready for the eighth and final bath, black. At this stage the only parts of the whole design that were not covered in wax were the sky, a small part of the turban, the two panthers and the three little birds in the center foreground. The black was started pure, at a temperature of about 90 degrees, and the piece remained in this bath about an hour. It was then taken out, the temperature brought up to 110 degrees, blue added to the solution and the panel again dipped for another hour. The blue was added in order to improve the tone of the black. A solid blue-black was obtained in this way in place of the rusty black that would have been the result of dyeing straight black over the red. After the required intensity of tone had been reached, the piece was well rinsed and dried, preparatory to dipping in gasoline to remove the wax. The making of this piece took about 4 weeks, exclusive of the time taken to prepare the original sketch or the full-size cartoon. About 5 pounds of pure beeswax was used to cover all the surfaces, and 15 gallons of gasoline were necessary to clean the piece. This is not surprising when one realizes the size of the panel, which was 8 feet high and 13 feet 4 inches wide, in all, 15,360 square inches. Indexer acids, 70 application of design, 50 clean outline, 54 color groups, 64 color relation, 73 composition of color, the 69 crackle 37, 62D difference in methods, 2 different kinds of tauntings, 19 digesellof, 27 Dutch artists of fame, 25 dyes, 40 dyes and dye manufacturers, 70 dye tubs, 41 European use of batik, 29 extracting color, 66 fabrics, 41 folding material, 51 gasoline, 56 gasoline economy, 58 handling the taunting, 54 headdress, 4 heating apparatus, 39 history. 24J Javanese costume, 3 Javanese design, 5K canes, 3L Lebio, 27M matching colors, 72N native industry, 13 native process, 15P painting in colors, 63 precautions, 57 preparing brushes, 36 preparation of material, 50 preventing the wax from sticking, 53 price of native tianting, 44 primary and secondary colors, 69 are redrawing of design, 52 removing stain, 40 rewaxing, 62 rinsing, 61 slendang, 4 streaks in dyeing, 61 T temperature of dye bath, 59 tertiary colors, 71 tiantings, 32 japs, 7 use of brush, 36 use of too much dye, the 60 wax mixtures, 37 transcribers note illustrations in this ebook have been positioned between paragraphs and outside quotations. In versions of this ebook that support hyperlinks, the page references in the list of illustrations lead to the corresponding illustrations. Illustrations without captions have had a description added. This is denoted with parentheses. The index was not checked for proper alphabetization or correct page references. Obvious typographical errors and punctuation errors have been corrected after careful comparison with other occurrences within the text and consultation of external sources. Some hyphens in words have been silently removed, some added, when a predominant preference was found in the original book. Except for those changes noted below, all misspellings in the text, and inconsistent or archaic usage, have been retained. PG4, Capale replaced by Capala PG16. Household replaced by household PG57, added missing word after in the phrase lighted match immediately after the vessel containing the gasoline PG59, removed duplicate or from 46 degrees centigrade or 36 degrees Reauma. End of the Project Gutenberg ebook Batiks. And how to make them updated editions will replace the previous one, the old editions will be renamed. Creating the works from print editions not protected by U.S. copyright law means that no one owns a United States copyright in these works, so the Foundation, and you, can copy and distribute it in the United States without permission and without paying copyright royalties. Special rules, set forth in the general terms of use part of this license, apply to copying and distributing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol concept and trademark. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark, and may not be used if you charge for an ebook, except by following the terms of the trademark license, including paying royalties for use of the Project Gutenberg trademark. If you do not charge anything for copies of this ebook, complying with the trademark license is very easy. You may use this ebook for nearly any purpose such as creation of derivative works, reports, performances and research. Project Gutenberg ebooks may be modified and printed and given away. You may do practically anything in the United States with ebooks not protected by U.S. copyright law. Redistribution is subject to the trademark license, especially commercial redistribution. Start. Full license. The full Project Gutenberg license. Please read this before you distribute or use this work to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol mission of promoting the free distribution of electronic works. By using or distributing this work, or any other work associated in any way with the phrase Project Gutenberg, you agree to comply with all the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license available with this file or online at www.gutenberg.org/license. Section 1. General Terms of Use and Redistributing Project Gutenberg Trademark Symbol Electronic Works 1.0. By reading or using any part of this Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work, you indicate that you have read, understand, agree to and accept all the terms of this license and intellectual property, trademark/copyright, agreement. If you do not agree to abide by all the terms of this agreement, you must cease using and return or destroy all copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works in your possession. If you paid a fee for obtaining a copy of or access to a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work and you do not agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement, you may obtain a refund from the person or entity to whom you paid the fee as set forth in paragraph 1.e.8. 1.b Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark. It may only be used on or associated in any way with an electronic work by people who agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement. There are a few things that you can do with most Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works even without complying with the full terms of this agreement. See paragraph 1.c below. There are a lot of things you can do with Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works if you follow the terms of this agreement and help preserve free future access to Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. See paragraph 1.e below. 1.c. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the Foundation or PGLAF, owns a compilation copyright in the collection of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. Nearly all the individual works in the collection are in the public domain in the United States. If an individual work is unprotected by copyright law in the United States and you are located in the United States, we do not claim a right to prevent you from copying, distributing, performing, displaying or creating derivative works based on the work as long as all references to Project Gutenberg are removed. Of course, we hope that you will support the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol mission of promoting free access to electronic works by freely sharing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works in compliance with the terms of this agreement for keeping the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol name associated with the work. You can easily comply with the terms of this agreement by keeping this work in the same format with its attached full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license when you share it without charge with others. 1.d. The copyright laws of the place where you are located also govern what you can do with this work. Copyright laws in most countries are in a constant state of change. If you are outside the United States, check the laws of your country in addition to the terms of this agreement before downloading, copying, displaying, performing, distributing or creating derivative works based on this work or any other Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work. The Foundation makes no representations concerning the copyright status of any work in any country other than the United States. 1.e Unless you have removed all references to Project Gutenberg, 1.e.1. The following sentence, with active links to, or other immediate access to, the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license must appear prominently whenever any copy of a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work, any work on which the phrase Project Gutenberg appears, or with which the phrase Project Gutenberg is associated, is accessed, displayed, performed, viewed, copied or distributed. This ebook is for the use of anyone anywhere in the United States and most other parts of the world at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook or online at www.gutenberg.org. If you are not located in the United States, you will have to check the laws of the country where you are located before using this ebook. 1.e.2. If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work is derived from texts not protected by U.S. copyright law, does not contain a notice indicating that it is posted with permission of the copyright holder, the work can be copied and distributed to anyone in the United States without paying any fees or charges. If you are redistributing or providing access to a work with the phrase Project Gutenberg associated with or appearing on the work, you must comply either with the requirements of paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 or obtain permission for the use of the work and the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark as set forth in paragraphs 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.3. If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work is posted with the permission of the copyright holder, your use and distribution must comply with both paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 and any additional terms imposed by the copyright holder. Additional terms will be linked to the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license for all works posted with the permission of the copyright holder found at the beginning of this work. 1.e.4. Do not unlink or detach or remove the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license terms from this work, or any files containing a part of this work or any other work associated with Project Gutenberg trademark symbol. 1.e.5. Do not copy, display, perform, distribute or redistribute this electronic work, or any part of this electronic work, without prominently displaying the sentence set forth in paragraph 1.e.1 with active links or immediate access to the full terms of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license. 1.e.6. You may convert to and distribute this work in any binary, compressed, marked up, non-proprietary or proprietary form, including any word processing or hypertext form. However, if you provide access to or distribute copies of a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work in a format other than plain vanilla ASCII or other format used in the official version posted on the official Project Gutenberg trademark symbol website, www.gutenberg.org, you must, at no additional cost, fee or expense to the user, provide a copy, a means of exporting a copy, or a means of obtaining a copy upon request, of the work in its original plain vanilla ASCII or other form. Any alternate format must include the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license as specified in paragraph 1.e.1. 1.e.7. Do not charge a fee for access to, viewing, displaying, performing, copying or distributing any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works unless you comply with paragraph 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.8. You may charge a reasonable fee for copies of or providing access to or distributing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works provided that you pay a royalty fee of 20% of the gross profits you derive from the use of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works calculated using the method you already use to calculate your applicable taxes. The fee is owed to the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark, but he has agreed to donate royalties under this paragraph to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Royalty payments must be paid within 60 days following each date on which you prepare, or are legally required to prepare, your periodic tax returns. Royalty payments should be clearly marked as such and sent to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation at the address specified in Section 4, Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. You provide a full refund of any money paid by a user who notifies you in writing, or by email, within 30 days of receipt that he does not agree to the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license. You must require such a user to return or destroy all copies of the works possessed in a physical medium and discontinue all use of and all access to other copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works. You provide, in accordance with paragraph 1.f.3, a full refund of any money paid for a work or a replacement copy, if a defect in the electronic work is discovered and reported to you within 90 days of receipt of the work. You comply with all other terms of this agreement for free distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works. 1.e.9. If you wish to charge a fee or distribute a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work or group of works on different terms than are set forth in this agreement, you must obtain permission in writing from the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the manager of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark. Contact the Foundation as set forth in Section 3 below. 1.f1.f.1. Project Gutenberg volunteers and employees expend considerable effort to identify, do copyright research on, transcribe and proofread works not protected by U.S. copyright law in creating the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol collection. Despite these efforts, Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works, and the medium on which they may be stored, may contain defects such as, but not limited to, incomplete, inaccurate or corrupt data, transcription errors, a copyright or other intellectual property infringement, a defective or damaged disk or other medium, a computer virus, or computer codes that damage or cannot be read by your equipment. 1.f.2 Limited warranty, disclaimer of damages, except for the right of replacement or refund described in paragraph 1.f.3. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark, and any other party distributing a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work under this agreement, disclaim all liability to you for damages, costs and expenses, including legal fees. You agree that you have no remedies for negligence, strict liability, breach of warranty or breach of contract except those provided in paragraph 1.f.3. You agree that the Foundation, the trademark owner, and any distributor under this agreement will not be liable to you for actual, direct, indirect, consequential, punitive or incidental damages even if you give notice of the possibility of such damage. 1.f.3 Limited right of replacement or refund. If you discover a defect in this electronic work within 90 days of receiving it, you can receive a refund of the money, if any, you paid for it by sending a written explanation to the person you received the work from. If you received the work on a physical medium, you must return the medium with your written explanation. The person or entity that provided you with the defective work may elect to provide a replacement copy in lieu of a refund. If you received the work electronically, the person or entity providing it to you may choose to give you a second opportunity to receive the work electronically in lieu of a refund. If the second copy is also defective, you may demand a refund in writing without further opportunities to fix the problem. 1.f.4 Except for the limited right of replacement or refund set forth in paragraph 1.f.3, this work is provided to you as is, with no other warranties of any kind, express or implied, including but not limited to warranties of merchantability or fitness for any purpose. 1.f.5 Some states do not allow disclaimers of certain implied warranties or the exclusion or limitation of certain types of damages. If any disclaimer or limitation set forth in this agreement violates the law of the state applicable to this agreement, the agreement shall be interpreted to make the maximum disclaimer or limitation permitted by the applicable state law. The invalidity or unenforceability of any provision of this agreement shall not void the remaining provisions. 1.f.6 Indemnity. You agree to indemnify and hold the Foundation, the trademark owner, any agent or employee of the Foundation, anyone providing copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works in accordance with this agreement, and any volunteers associated with the production, promotion and distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works, harmless from all liability, costs and expenses, including legal fees, that arise directly or indirectly from any of the following which you do or cause to occur. A. Distribution of this or any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work. B. Alteration, modification, or additions or deletions to any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work, and C. Any defect you cause. Section 2. Information about the mission of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol is synonymous with the free distribution of electronic works in formats readable by the widest variety of computers, including obsolete, old, middle-aged and new computers. It exists because of the efforts of hundreds of volunteers and donations from people in all walks of life. Volunteers and financial support to provide volunteers with the assistance they need are critical to reaching Project Gutenberg trademark symbol's goals and ensuring that the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol collection will remain freely available for generations to come. In 2001, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation was created to provide a secure and permanent future for Project Gutenberg trademark symbol and future generations. To learn more about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation and how your efforts and donations can help, see sections 3 and 4 and the Foundation information page at www.gutenberg.org. Section 3. Information about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation is a non-profit 501(c)(3) educational corporation organized under the laws of the state of Mississippi and granted tax-exempt status by the Internal Revenue Service. The Foundation's IN or Federal Tax Identification Number is 64-6221541. Contributions to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation are tax-deductible to the full extent permitted by U.S. federal laws and your state's laws. The Foundation's business office is located at 809 North 1500 West, Salt Lake City, UT 84116, 801-596-1887. Email contact links and up-to-date contact information can be found at the Foundation's website and official page at www.gutenberg.org/contact section 4. Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol depends upon and cannot survive without widespread public support and donations to carry out its mission of increasing the number of public domain and licensed works that can be freely distributed in machine-readable form accessible by the widest array of equipment, including outdated equipment. Many small donations, $1 to $5,000, are particularly important to maintaining tax-exempt status with the IRS. The Foundation is committed to complying with the laws regulating charities and charitable donations in all 50 states of the United States. Compliance requirements are not uniform and it takes a considerable effort, much paperwork and many fees to meet and keep up with these requirements. We do not solicit donations in locations where we have not received written confirmation of compliance. To send donations or determine the status of compliance for any particular state, visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. While we cannot and do not solicit contributions from states where we have not met the solicitation requirements, we know of no prohibition against accepting unsolicited donations from donors in such states who approach us with offers to donate. International donations are gratefully accepted, but we cannot make any statements concerning tax treatment of donations received from outside the United States. U.S. laws alone swamp our small staff. Please check the Project Gutenberg web pages for current donation methods and addresses. Donations are accepted in a number of other ways, including checks, online payments and credit card donations. To donate, please visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. Section 5. General information about Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. Professor Michael S. Hart was the originator of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol concept of a library of electronic works that could be freely shared with anyone. For 40 years, he produced and distributed Project Gutenberg trademark symbol ebooks with only a loose network of volunteer support. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol ebooks are often created from several printed editions, all of which are confirmed as not protected by copyright in the US unless a copyright notice is included. Thus, we do not necessarily keep ebooks in compliance with any particular paper edition. Most people start at our website, which has the main PG search facility, www.gutenberg.org. This website includes information about Project Gutenberg trademark symbol, including how to make donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, how to help produce our new ebooks, and how to subscribe to our email newsletter to hear about new ebooks.